Right, so this here is meant to be my iPhone 16e that I just ordered from China. Shortly after the announcement that just came out by Apple not too long ago, I thought, you know what? I guarantee these are popping up cheap on eBay. And I found a listing straight from, where's this one from? This one's from Shenzhen, China, as they always are. But they've not just sent me what looks to be the iPhone 16e. No, it looks like over in China they've already got the 16 SE Mini, which I have no idea what this is. I think it cost me about 20 quid. I think it was even under that. Let's see what the £20 iPhone from China looks like, because it looks a bit small to be an iPhone 16. In fact, let me get an iPhone for reference. The package is smaller than an iPhone. But anyway, let's get this thing open and find out what's inside. What is our iPhone 16e? Oh, it comes in a box. An iPhone-shaped box. That is something. They've even got the little notch. What comes inside the box? Oh, colour. 16 gig plus 2 gig RAM. That's good. And we've got cloison colour. Whatever a cloison is. But we've got that colour. Oh, it's here. It was very small. Oh, it's a really it's a really tiny knockoff iPhone with a little screen protector. What else do we get? We got a knockoff iPhone. Do you get like a cable? It comes with a cable, comes with a case, comes with a SIM card tray. And what's this? It's all in China. Oh no, it has got an English bit about how to charge, and that's it. Let's go plug this in and see what it actually does. Maybe it's got some battery already left in it. I mean, they've got the wrong amount of cameras for the phone that I ordered, but it does look like a very small iPhone. Now, this thing is so small that I am really zoomed in to try and film it, so there's a bit of a size comparison for you. It's going to be tricky to even film the screen on this, because that is ridiculously small. So what we'll do is we'll see if this thing will actually turn on with whatever battery life it had from the factory. Might need to go on charge. Oh, no, we've got it. Welcome. Welcome. Let's peel off that screen protector. Oh, look at that condition. Wow. I'm curious what it's even running. Oh, it just redoes the welcome animation. Taking some time to turn on. We're still going. Oh, it's running Android. That took a long time to turn on. Does it unlock? It's got knockoff. It's running Android with knockoff iOS based on. Oh, this is impossible. Running. Is that like iOS 6? From like the early days? We've got Play Store. We've got Chrome. We've got Contacts. We've got Gallery. I mean, what version of Android even is this? Have they changed the settings menu, or is it just. No, it's just stock Android, and we've got 89% battery life. It is the 16 SE Mini. They've got it down there. They really know what they're selling. Android 9? No, it says it's running Android 9, but here it says it's running Android 10. So the phone itself is not actually too sure which version of Android it's actually running. I mean, they've done a good job. It does look remotely like an iPhone. I'm curious what the camera looks like now. We will do some proper testing. It's got a camera that just about seems to do something. Can it do video? Yeah, it can. We've got video. Right, let's actually get on with this video and see what we can make this do. And what the actual specs are, because I'm very confused how they've pulled this off, especially for under 20 quid. That's why the thing with these scams now is they don't even bother sending you something that's junk. I mean, this is probably junk, but they send you usable junk now that you're not going to return. And that's sort of how I've noticed these scams running, is you don't get what you ordered. I mean, no one is for this price. But if you ordered this and end up with this phone, you're not going to bother going through the returns process. It simply isn't worth it. So people end up keeping it, but let's get on with the rest of the video. So yes, it would appear that despite the 100% chance of us being scammed, we're seeing iPhone scams have now evolved into the same world as a lot of the other scams we've recently got, where you're not quite getting what you wanted. I mean, we really are exaggerating the terms here, but they don't just send you a brick in a box. I mean, with how much consumer protection even the sketchiest of platforms give you nowadays, that option really isn't as viable as it used to be. Instead, what we've got appears to be a very cobbled together iPhone knockoff that seems to be suffering majorly in the size department. And I'm going to apologise in advance for how awkward some of these angles are, because my thumbs take up over half the screen. And there really is very little we can do about that with not, trying to capture them on there and actually trying to show you what's on screen. So I've done my best here. That, and the screen is also using some really questionable technology that we'll be getting into later. But mostly, while I've been rambling, what we've actually been doing is logging into an older, unused Google account, because I don't really want this thing having access to any of my real details just yet, and we're trying to get some apps downloaded. Which was an infuriating process for a couple of reasons. One, because actually trying to log into that account and get through all the security questions to get into Google, and then after you spend forever trying to fumble around on such a small screen to actually see what apps you want to use, and what ones still exist over here on Android, you have no decent library that shows you your recently downloaded apps, which meant I had to go through from menu to menu and get them all downloaded one by one, which was going alright. But then Google Play decided it wanted to update itself and all its processes and cancelled every single download I had queued, which would normally be fine, but with how unwieldy this screen is, it led to another painful 45 minutes queuing them all up again, and in total I think we were probably spending about an hour and a half just getting some apps on the phone. And I know someone's going to comment saying, why didn't I do all this remotely with Google Play? And I have the answer for you. It simply doesn't do anything. This is not exactly the pinnacle of technology. It can't make its mind up what version of Android it's actually running. So it doesn't exactly like working as a normal phone works. But anyway, we did actually get some apps on the phone. But just what is this phone? I mean, I'm fairly sure we can all tell it's not an iPhone 16e. But what is it and what is powering it? So it would appear the latest in scam iPhone technology has progressed to new levels now, using actually somewhat viable ARM technology rather than whatever random SoCs they'd managed to merge together into a less than functional blob. This features a MediaTek 6580 processor, which really does give us a new level of insight into how these things have been put together, likely using scrap components from near on 10 years ago, because to my knowledge these were budget parts from around 2015-2016. It does however come with 2GB of rather decent DDR3L RAM, which should at least let it do something, although the weird Android 9, 10 and iOS 6 combo they've got running on it does have some really aggressive memory management, which is how they've managed to stretch 2GB of RAM so far. This is all tied up and with the tried and tested Mali 400 GPU, which seems to have powered more devices than AMD or Nvidia could ever hope to. It's not a bad chip, but will definitely be feeling its age in the modern world. So we've got some scrap components, which doesn't sound too hopeful, till you realise that when you get down to the nitty-gritty reality of these parts, they aren't bad specs for one, a scam, or any other way you want to look at this, or two, a brand new phone for under 20 quid. It's just a shame about that awful 360p TN screen though. To actually get the hardware info wasn't actually too bad. Through CPU-Z, which usually gives you a full breakdown on what's actually powering your phone, the only part that took a little while was that occasionally between swiping through the categories, the phone would play a 3-minute unskippable TikTok advert. I don't have TikTok, I don't intend to ever use TikTok, but that's what it does. And the small cancel arrow, the one that's usually impossibly small, was now a pixel-precise input that I simply couldn't manage, even with 3 full minutes of trying, multiple times over and over again. Fortunately, with that all out of the way though, we were able to find out the specs, and after that, I decided we should load up 3D Mark, because it's no one's surprise that, we want to actually see it do some benchmarks and find out just where is this hardware being limited. And it's no surprise as well, it doesn't actually support any of the new tests. So we're going to be doing this the old way and running Ice Storm Extreme, for those of you that remember this, because somehow you can still access this on this phone. And after completing the test, well, the performance was bang on where you'd expect it to be, with processor performance being just about acceptable by mid-2010 standards, and the Mali graphics card trailing behind because this is a very basic version of it. Despite the minuscule battery life though, it actually didn't throttle too badly just once or twice during the elongated CPU test, so the main thing that you can get out of this is that the performance is actually somewhat stable. Eventually though, after enough time spent tweaking things around and trying to get them set up, it was about time to give the specs of this phone a real workout with some actual tests. That's before we get into the day-to-day usage and, more using it as a phone. Now, I've done my best to film this as well as physically possible, but it is more or less impossible because I'm fighting against a screen that can't decide what contrast ratios it wants to use, mostly ones that don't appear on the human eye or a camera, or I'm dealing with the fact the screen is so small that my hands get in the way. Trust me, I gave myself a bad back trying to hunch in front of the camera for some of these, but I hope you all appreciate the pain and anguish I went through to try and keep this thing in focus so you can see what actually happens in the benchmarks. Starting off the benchmarks, we have Minecraft, not the new Bedrock edition, as unfortunately that seems to have a major issue where the closest we could get to being in-game was the Mojang logo. Instead we have the original Minecraft Pocket Edition, which offers 3 different graphic settings. Fancy did prove too taxing, even in our 360p native resolution, but the default settings do look nice enough and actually ran alright, nearly achieving a perfect 60 FPS. Now, there's no way to monitor our 1% lows here, this is not exactly high-tech hardware, and the minimum FPS is the best we're going to get. So it does indicate there was stuttering when loading up into even a very tiny map, but other than that, Minecraft does seem to run alright. The rather fantastic port of Oddworld Munch's Odyssey, originally found on the original Xbox, actually ran really well. It was actually better than Minecraft Pocket Edition in places, which was a surprise. There was certainly a lot of hitching when loading into new areas, but during some of the more intensive flyover scenes, the performance remained really decent. So let me say, it's good performance. But let me tell you, trying to do anything in this game with how small and questionably responsive the screen was made things near enough impossible. Trying to close the hint menus, which you have to do to progress, was a solid 10 to 60 second minigame trying to hit the 1 pixel that may or may not actually close it. After a great deal of pain and anguish trying to get a ton of files onto the very, very slow storage of this device, I managed to get Half-Life 1 running through the X-3D engine, where the game was running in our native 360p resolution and ran surprisingly well. I mean, imagine showing this off to someone in 1998, that you're playing Half-Life on a portable device that you got scammed on. I mean, a lot of the details are hardly visible, not just because of the actual screen size, but because the awful contrast of the TN panel behind it, and it made a lot of the darker areas of the game hardly visible on even the highest brightness, something that only looks worse on camera. In some more positive news, PlayStation emulation worked remarkably well for such a shoddy quality device. We were able to run the game with a few enhancements as long as we had the dual-core mode enabled. We did have frameskip enabled as well, which meant we were able to run the game from anywhere between 25 to 24 FPS throughout the opening of Metal Gear Solid. So that was rather nice to see. Still, actually hard to see anything actually going on with the screen though. Shouldn't really be of any surprise that it runs quite easily Game Boy Advance emulation, and given the simplicity of some of these games and the fact they're not usually too intensive, at least the Pokemon games aren't, it might actually be your best bet for getting anything to actually be playable on the device. Seeing that simplicity worked best, I decided to go down the complete opposite route with OpenTTD. And it's not exactly the performance here that matters, because usually if OpenTTD launches, it'll run. But the amount of time it took me to navigate menus, because you aren't going to be reading any text here, they become squiggles from the first menu. But if you could just about squint enough, you could make out some of the symbols to eventually make a very crude network. I mean, if someone actually wanted to do this, sure, you could, but this may be the worst way you could ever possibly experience OpenTTD, and that deserves a little bit of respect for the fact that, 1, it runs, and 2, why would anyone ever do this? So gaming may not be this phone's sweet spot, but surely it does work as a smartphone, right? I mean, this thing is meant to be an iPhone, the peak of mobile technology, and well, it does do most things you want to do on it. just it will do them very, very slowly and very, very awkwardly. I mean, getting on YouTube here, it's not an issue. It's just the time it takes to actually get onto a video. And once you can actually figure out what you want to watch, because trying to get onto anything that YouTube isn't just actively recommending you on the home screen, it will cap out at 720p, of which you'll just be seeing 360p and a slightly higher bitrate. And it will drop frames for the first 10 to 20 seconds of video, but after that it is actually rather smooth sailing, provided you can manage the fairly awful speaker.
3D Phantom. Well, this may actually be the worst looking exclusive graphics card.
Now, I don't actually have anything written down in my script for this because I actually forgot that I tested Steam Link. Usually, I always review it and it either works or it doesn't, but this one, well, it struggled in a weird way. It took me a while to actually get it paired to Steam, and both devices were connected with a rather decent Wi-Fi signal, which is not always ideal, but should be more than enough for testing Steam Link because that's usually what I do. But what happened here was the phone sort of just buffered. I mean, it was sending through the controls for the game perfectly fine. We could actually see it updating on the laptop screen. The problem is, it wasn't actually receiving a video signal back, and the only way to get it back was to close the app, relaunch it, and then hope that eventually it would come back for a good 15 to 30 seconds, and then it would drop out again. Now, it claims there was a network issue, but there really wasn't here. It was just a case of the phone couldn't handle Steam Link. And it's worth noting, 3D Mark, the rest of the games I tested, anything like that, the phone didn't warm up at all. But Steam Link here puts so much strain on both the video card, the processor, and I'm assuming the Wi-Fi chip inside, that it heated up unbelievably hot, which might have actually been causing it to throttle. So, Steam Link? Not exactly a good one here. It can also do things like Spotify, but album art is a challenge as it loads them in, and don't go skipping too many songs at once, as it sort of buffers inputs and will carry on skipping until it's eventually decided it's had enough. Ultimately, it does still work, and I really was running out of things to test on the phone, because I've been carrying it around with me and just trying to use it as much as possible so that I can give you some sort of conclusion, and that did even include taking it out and using it as a camera. So why don't we get close to rounding off with some quality footage from the iPhone 16 SE Mini, or whatever they're actually calling this scam. So there we have it, the latest in scam technology now being applied to even Apple's latest iPhone. And honestly, I don't know what to say. It's not even that much of a scam because sure, you're not getting an iPhone, but what you are getting is a smartphone that does actually work. And at the end of the day, you aren't spending 500 quid on this and being sent this. You're spending under 20 quid. It doesn't seem to be making any weird communications or anything like that on its outbound networks. It just seems like 10-year-old hardware that's been packaged into a minuscule replica of an iPhone and then flogged on instead of the product you actually ordered. If you did spend a few hundred quid on this, you'd be more annoyed. But with the way these scams are going, they know that people have savvied up a little bit, and it's not the direction they're taking it. They're making cheap products, making them just about usable or comical enough for people not to refund it, and carrying on like that. And it means you end up with these really weird, almost innovative products that you can't buy otherwise. I mean, I don't know what you're going to call this video. Is it a review of a knockoff iPhone? Is it consumer advice? I don't even know what you want to call this anymore because it's been a bit of a pain to even make this video. But I hope you've all enjoyed it, and thank you very much for watching, and good night.